what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hey, welcome along to the Mark Steyn Show, where the hits just keep on coming.
You are 16, going on 17, baby, it's time to think. Better beware, be canny and careful, baby, you're on the brink.
These days, everyone is 16 going on 17, and partly in consequence it is Britain that is on the brink. Tonight we're going to have a follow-up on those disturbing scenes we showed you last night from just one Heathrow hotel housing thousands of so-called asylum seekers. But no, it's not an invasion, not an invasion. Don't you even think that. It's more military-aged men than most NATO members ever sent to Afghanistan or Iraq, but don't even think about calling it an invasion. While we're surrendering on the home front, we're also surrendering overseas. Just in case you feel you're not broke enough yet, Rishi Sunak wants to give your money to China as so-called climate reparations in compensation for the Industrial Revolution that enables him to jet around the world giving your money away. That's great. If he wants to live in a pre-industrial society, by the way, I'm all in favor of dropping him in the jungles of New Guinea and telling him it's for a new season of I'm a faco, unprincipled pseudo-conservative, get me out of here. And Rishi and everyone else are eager for so-called COVID amnesty, even as they're planning to do it to you all over again. We're going to get into it all with Leilani Dowding, David Campbell-Bannerman, Mark Morano, Laura Perrins and Ava Valadingerbrook in a packed programme. And of course, don't forget the most important part of the show, that is you. Email me, ask me anything you'd like, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can Twitter me at GBNews. It's all coming up after Polly Middlehurst with the latest headlines. Over to you, Polly.
Mark, thank you, and good evening to you. The top story tonight on GB News. The Prime Minister says nurses' pay demands are clearly not affordable. His comments came after the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, said he'd had a constructive meeting with the Royal College of Nursing. The union's been urging the government to increase nurses' salaries or face industrial action across the country. Rishi Sunak says talks will continue.
Unions are asking for a 17% pay rise, and I think most people watching will recognise that clearly that's not affordable. And I, of course, recognise the challenges people face, and the way that we resolve these situations is we have an independent body that makes recommendations to the government, and indeed the Health Secretary accepted those recommendations in full, and I'm pleased that he will be sitting down with the unions to see how we can resolve this.
And that comes as just over 7 million people in England are now reportedly waiting to start routine hospital treatment. That's a new record high. The latest data released by NHS England today shows that over 400,000 patients have been waiting more than a year for healthcare. A&E waiting lists have also reached their highest level since 2010. And 1 in 5 patients who've had surgery cancelled had to wait longer than 28 days for a new appointment. And in more strike action, teachers in Scotland have announced their first strike date after voting overwhelmingly for industrial action. Members of the EIS union will walk out on the 24th of November after rejecting a 5% pay increase. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, says the Scottish Government is limited by a fixed budget.
We operate within a fixed budget. That was one of the points I've just been making to the Prime Minister. Without additional resources from the UK Government, there is a hard limit on what the Scottish Government is able to do. Within that, we will continue to talk to trade unions, and we will continue to do everything we can to give public sector workers the best possible pay deals.
And England manager Gareth Southgate has named his 26-man squad for the World Cup in Qatar, which kicks off in just over a week's time. The FA making the announcement on the England club Twitter feed. So, Leicester midfielder James Maddison has been included in the squad, as has Newcastle's Callum Wilson and Man United's Marcus Rashford. Former Tottenham, West Ham and Portsmouth manager Harry Redknapp told GB News tonight it'll take more than skill, though, to win the tournament.
Had a great drawing in the last World Cup. We got to the semi-final without really playing a decent team, and then we could get beat by Croatia. If the draw's in our favour, we can miss Argentina or Brazil or whoever. There's no reason we can't go very, very close again. I think we've got a big chance.
Harry Redknapp. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, the People's Channel, where now it's time for Mark Steyn.
This, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and its territories and possessions around the globe, is a great nation. A great nation. It is the nation that more than any other can plausibly claim to be the one that built the modern world. I'm not talking about language, law, culture. I'm not talking about the fact that it was the first self-liquidating empire in history, that starting with the introduction of responsible government in Nova Scotia in 1848, has spread its constitutional system to every corner of the earth, Australia, India, Mauritius, St. Kitts, Tuvalu, and that system has enabled more people to live lives to their fullest potential than any other, so that if you look at the global top 20 rankings of GDP per capita, over half of them are current or former realms of His Britannic Majesty. I don't mean any of that. Save that for another day when we launch the Imperialist Hour, coming soon to GB News. I'm talking about Telford. No, not Telford, the gang rape hellhole whose sick pathologies we cover on this show every other week. I mean Thomas Telford, the great civil engineer for whom they named the new town back when the area, Ironbridge, Coalbrookdale, was known as the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, rather than the birthplace of Pakistani child rape gangs into which it has since diversified. As Toby Young noted on Monday's show, before the Industrial Revolution, there hadn't been much in the way of human progress for the average fella. Life was nasty, brutish and short. There wasn't much in the way of social mobility. If you were a peasant in the 11th century, chances are your great-great-great-whatever grandkid would be a peasant in the 16th century. The Industrial Revolution changed all that, not just for Englishmen, Scotsmen, but for millions and billions of people around the planet once they got a piece of the action. Oh, whoops, sorry, no, breaking news. Apparently now we have to apologise for what went on in Telford and pay compensation over it. Not for all the child gang rape, that's fine and dandy as far as the heartless British state and the rape gang enablers are concerned, but for the stuff that Telford and Ironbridge were doing before they diversified into raping children. The great liberating force of the Industrial Revolution. That's Britain's #1 crime now. At COP27, the big climate beano at Sharm el-Sheikh, the Prime Minister, Rishi Rich, has indicated his support for climate reparations. And as this great nation was the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution, we're on the hook for the lion's share. This is what 12 years of hideous, jelly-spined, unprincipled pseudo-conservatism by the hollow men who've taken over a once great party has brought us to. Net zero leads logically to climate reparations. Why not? If you meet your opponents halfway, don't be surprised to find that they've moved even further left and expect you to meet them 3/4 of the way. Until a great nation such as this finds itself having to pay reparations for its greatest gift to the world, even by the stupidity of the Cameron, May, Johnson, Truss, Sunak Tory party. This is a new low. We're going to get into that with Laura Perrins and Mark Morano, but we have to take the climate seriously because apparently it's responsible for all those strapping young lads scrambling ashore at Dover and Folkestone. Here's an expert on the telly to explain it to you.
We're already seeing unprecedented climate migration. It's going to only increase, and nobody's talking about this. It's not on the agenda at COP27, and the entire narrative really around migration needs to change.
So climate change is driving the great migrations that have made booking an English hotel room for a weekend break so challenging. If you're wondering why 2% of Albanians have moved here, well, take a look at this. This is global warming in Albania over the last century and a quarter. This is the town of Diba. It's the bottom line there. Back in 1931, the seasonal high in the summer was 12.02 degrees Celsius, whereas now, 90 years later, it's 12.4 degrees Celsius. And apparently these Albanians can't take it. That's why climate change has forced them to flee Albania, dripping in sweat, to run drug and prostitution rings in Manchester. Well, not all Albanians, because apparently the increase of 1/3 of a degree doesn't affect Albanian women or Albanian grandparents or Albanian babies. They take that 0.38 of a degree in their stride. It just specifically targets the demographic of Albania's young men who have to get out of there in a hurry. Oh, and unaccompanied minors too, quote unquote. Unaccompanied minors. These tales of unaccompanied minors are absolutely heartbreaking, aren't they? Can we have some footage of unaccompanied minors? Here you...
You are 16, going on 17. Fellows will fall in line. Eager young lads and roues and cads will offer you food and wine.
Can't you guys get anything right? I asked for unaccompanied minors. Those minors are accompanied by a full orchestra. Okay, I think we've got some real unaccompanied minors for you now. Yesterday, we sent our producers over to the Atrium Hotel, a brand new luxury hotel at Heathrow, that is lying to prospective customers about being closed for refurbishment. In fact, it's become a home to thousands of young male asylum seekers from Iraq and Iran, thousands just in one hotel. But the hotel is also housing, quote, unaccompanied minors. Breaks your heart, doesn't it? Poor wee abandoned little moppets so far from mummy and daddy. Well, here are some of those unaccompanied minors at the hotel. Yeah, look at them. They are 16 going on 17. How long has that been going on? Evidently some time. In the case of that fellow with the slight touch of bum fluff on his upper lip, if he's an unaccompanied minor, I'm 12. But they're coming soon to a primary school near you. Our pal Leilani Dowding and former MEP David Campbell Bannerman are both with us. David, let me start with you. Almost every aspect of this so-called refugee crisis is a scam from top to toe.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mark. You know, what do you call an asylum seeker? You know, what do you call a refugee? I think we've got a human rights fest, you know, the Refugee Convention, Human Rights Act under Blair, European Court of Human Rights. It's a right mess, and they aren't real refugees, many of these people. And I think the British public are getting fed up with it all, to be honest.
But what is going to be done about it? Because right now you've got one party, and that is His Majesty's loyal opposition, who seem to be generally in favour of open borders as a philosophical thing. And then you've got another party that talks tough about it, but has actually allowed this situation to metastasize on their watch. And we have another tough talker in the present Home Secretary, but is she actually going to do anything about it?
Well, I think we've got this sort of knot of human rights laws, as I say, that we've got to untangle. I mean, Dominic Raab is back now, and he wants to get rid of the Human Rights Act, which is Tony Blair's act. And that's quite right. You know, get rid of that. That forces our courts to take into account what the European Court of Human Rights is ruling. And a lot of deportations are stopped by that. So that would help. But, you know, we've got to look at the Refugee Convention, the UN one of 1951. This is not the way it should be working. People should be claiming asylum if they are true refugees in the first safe country they come to, not travel right across Europe so they get better benefits and better treatment in the United Kingdom.
Why is the British bureaucracy, the civil service, all the relevant agencies, so well disposed to this invasion? I noticed when I landed at Heathrow a couple of days ago that the first thing you see when you enter the border force zone is a big sign saying, if you want to claim asylum, now's the time to do it. Claim it now. You do get the feeling that the border force, not to mention the Royal Navy, the RNLI, have basically decided to take the side of this very demographically skewed group of 90% young men.
I think we've become very wet as a society, to be honest. You know, we've become very weak. We think we owe these people you know, to be taken in and treated as our own. I don't think we can do that. You know, the British people are suffering. They've got cost of living challenges. You know, there's people on the streets in Britain. It's crazy that we have 300 hotels now around the UK being used to house these people. Many of those actually are breaking planning law, as we find out. You know, after 28 days, they should be, you know, they need a change of use permission because they become basically houses of multiple occupation, not hotels, or they become hostels. And again, that's a major issue going on with Ipswich and Hull challenging the law. And, you know, we seem to be willing to break the law when it comes to planning law, you know, to accommodate these people.
Well, let me ask you about that specifically then, because these fellows we spoke to yesterday said they'd been living there for 2 months, living there. So as you say, it is not a hotel. You can't book it as a hotel. They tell you that they're under refurbishment. Do you think that they have actually, Hounslow Council said they had no knowledge of this till it happened, so clearly no change of use permit has been applied for. Do the laws just now apply to lawful residents of the United Kingdom and not to a racket like this?
Well, I think it's a very important point, Mark. You know, that the court case refers to, I quote, unauthorized material change. And that means basically they don't have planning permission to do this. It's no longer a hotel. It's actually a hostel to put these people up. And, you know, there are real legal difficulties with that. And this is going on right across the country with some really quite major hotels. I mean, the other aspect, like with Ipswich, is that's down the road to me. I'm in Norwich. But, you know, they're worried that some of these hotels now, right in the center of town, it really damages their image. You know, they're trying to attract people in for Christmas or, you know, tourists to visit towns and cities. And if this goes on, you've got a major problem. They won't have the hotel capacity, for example. So, you know, why don't we use unused? So we built these mega prisons, for example, category C, they're prisons without bars. Why don't we use some of of those. There's 2 in the southeast, which could be used, and army camps. We're commemorating Armistice Day tomorrow. A lot of our military have to put up with this accommodation. Why are we actually being so soft on these people who had a much harder time in France, frankly?
Well, that is a good point, David, although I'm not sure, to be honest, that the way to mark Armistice Day is by housing military-aged young men from some very hostile cultures in British army camps across the UK. They would be much better if they did not set foot on UK soil in the first place. Thank you very much, David. As I said, our chum Leilani Dowding is here. We talk about this and we talk about it and the same points are made, and yet this conservative, so-called conservative government never acts.
Well, I think this is the problem. I think, you know, you asked me the question why a couple of weeks ago, and I kind of sat there for a minute and racked my head around it. And I think if they wanted to do something about it, they would. So it leads me to the conclusion that they're really not that bothered whether this keeps on going on, because there's so much money to be made in the movement of humans. You've got to look at Serco are border force and border control, but then they also get paid to house the immigrants and to find their homes. So they're making money both sides, and to me that's a conflict of interest.
It is, actually. That's a good way of putting it.
You know, and then possibly now they're talking about national IDs. It's like, hold on a minute, the British people have passports. We don't need national IDs. Why have we got to have these new IDs, possibly digital IDs, because there's a load of illegal immigrants coming in? So stop the illegal immigrants, like you said, but they don't seem to want to.
Where does it end, though? I mean, as I said, we've got 4,000 supposedly just in this one hotel at Heathrow. That's more than twice the size of the initial British invasion force in Afghanistan 20 years ago. That would be, when you've got 4,000 young men, that's an army. Why are we letting another 1,000 in every night?
It can only be because they're okay with it. I can't see any other reason. And it is an invasion and it's a takeover. And I looked it up. There's about 315 hotels around the country at the moment booked up with these men, with these illegals. And there's 4 more being booked up every single week. So it's not stopping, but it needs to stop. So I'm bad with acronyms, but we have to leave the ECHR and get out of that. And we have to, But
just looking at it from we have to leave the ECHR. There's no political price to that. The Guardian will yell at you, the BBC will yell at you, but no real person thinks this nation can't do anything without some Azerbaijani judge in Strasbourg weighing in on this. So why? We understand they're broke. They've spent all the money. They've done everything wrong for 3 years. They've screwed everything up. They've shut down the NHS after telling us to clap for it every Thursday. They've made everything screwed up as it can be. This would be easy to unscrew. Why don't they do it?
I do think it's to do with national IDs. I do think it's to do with digital IDs and the money, being made by these companies like Serco. We need to look into, who owns shares in those companies and also.
Well, that's the one that, what's his name? Is it Lord Soames's son? It's Winston Churchill's grandson is the head honcho of that. Is that one, Serco? I think that's Serco, isn't it?
Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, so you think it's just that everyone else is making too much money off this racket to be able to give it up? I
think that and, the ID cards. But it's a huge problem, Mark, because they are from such different cultures and they don't integrate into society properly. They don't want to integrate into society. It's just men that are coming over. And, if I was to go over to one of the countries they're from, I would have to dress differently, behave differently, all the rest of it. And they come here and they don't know our rules. They don't follow our rules because they don't even know our rules. Women are worthless to many of them.
Well, also, if you have, say, if you've got a village of, let's keep the arithmetic simple, but if you've got a village of 500, so 250 of them are female, and you move in 1,000 guys into one of these hotels, suddenly you've got 1,250 men for every 250 women. The demographic arithmetic of this is going to make life very, I mean, they've got stuff on the internet of, you know, young ladies tottering out of pubs late at night and these guys harassing them. They've got the numbers to do that, haven't they?
And it's happened in my hometown in Bournemouth. It's happened very close to where I am now in a school in a young girl got harassed by migrants, 13-year-old coming out of a school in Long Eaton in Derbyshire. You know, it's going on all around the country. There's, you know,
Who's the MP for Long Eaton in Derbyshire? No reason why you should know. I don't know either. We're going to find out his name. Why aren't you on this, you useless tosspot? I mean, this is. I can't understand. These are the most vulnerable people in our society. Young girls
and boys, young boys. Might I add? There was just a young boy raped in a migrant centre. And Diane Abbott came out with this insane tweet that
it was Suella's fault.
Yeah, that it was Suella's fault, and you know, you shouldn't treat them like rapists or they become rapists. Well, you know, what planet are we on?
No, and in fact, in one of those cases, the guy entered the defence that, in fact, it's perfectly reasonable to have sex with 9-year-old boys in my culture. So why should he be expected to put that on hold when he comes to Europe or to Britain? Yeah, I mean, but we will find out. I mean, if this is, if we've got migrants harassing little girls and little boys at primary school, one of these MPs needs to get off their flabby butts and actually do something about this. Otherwise, as you say, the conclusion has to be they want this to happen to us.
Occam's razor.
That's right. That's very true. Thank you very much, Leilani. Appreciate it as always. Up next, we're going to get your thoughts, GBviews at gbnews.uk. And we're going to get the latest on the Sharm El shakedown at COP27 from our man in Egypt. He's gotten down from his camel. Mark Morano's coming up. And Laura Perrins and Ava Vlaardinga broker here. We're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking. My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
GB News is the People's Channel, so let's channel what the people are saying. We wanted to know whether you thought the government of the United Kingdom had a duty of care to the whole world. Spiral Myth says, what are we? Everyone's mother? No, we don't have a duty of care to the whole world when there are people living in abject poverty and those that can't even heat their homes and put food on the table. But the government dishes out money like a cheap tin of Quality Street. You know, like Quality Street, Saddam Hussein, he loved those Quality Street toffees. That may explain why everybody in Iraq is now moving to hotels at Heathrow to be put up by British taxpayer expense. I assume they do get the free Quality Street. Leslie B says no. The primary duty of the British government is to the British people. We pay their wages, not the rest of the world. They can always chip in if they want to. Every little helps. No, doesn't it give you heartwarming pleasure to know as your granny is freezing to death that some nice, well-to-do fellow from Erbil in Iraq is living high off the hog on room service at Heathrow Airport. Titch says, of course the British government has a duty of care to the whole world. Of course they do, because they tell us so. Yeah, you know, it all makes sense, doesn't it? There's no money for you, there's no doctors, there's no ambulances, but anybody who gets here gets to stay here. I'm astonished, actually, that people put up with it. Lieutenant Colonel Kojak, probably Lieutenant Colonel Kojak, says, we're not responsible for other people in other countries. Our only responsibility is to our own people in our own country. Scrap all foreign aid and stop filling the world's begging bowls and let them hate us for free. One more from, what's this, Zatache? The British government do not care, full stop. These payments are just paydays for friends and family who coincidentally have NGOs to support the country. Yeah, this is what's happening now. Being in the human smuggling business is highly lucrative. This disgusting government has actually made it more lucrative. It's improved the profit margins of the human smugglers by getting people like the Border Force and the Royal National Lifeboat Institution to do all the ferrying across the channel. So this is how it works. You pay the $5,000 or £5,000 or whatever it is for them to ferry you into the United Kingdom, and they just have to get you basically 100 yards off the French beach, and then the RNLI will pick you up and do the difficult thing. It's disgraceful. The British government is collaborating. His Majesty's government is the business partner of human traffickers. Mark Morano has been covering COP27 for us, as is the way of all serious persons these days. He took a tube of superglue with him when he went to Egypt. Unfortunately, yeah, I think there he is. He's gluing himself to some ancient Egyptian antiquity. There he is. Oh, look at that. Look at that. And he really should be in Stop Oil Now, shouldn't he? Unfortunately, more and more of the world seems to have come totally unglued. 6 months ago, our friend Andrew Lawton was covering Klaus Schwab, the sinister Teutonic megalomaniac, hiding in plain sight as a sinister Teutonic megalomaniac, at his annual Spectre board meeting in his hollowed-out Alp at Davos. And he turned up this interesting nugget from Michael Evans, a Canadian chappie who's president of the Chinese company Alibaba.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So, individual carbon footprint tracker.
Aha, you don't say. The global media didn't bat an eye about that. Making a big deal about that kind of stuff is just for conspiracy theorists, right? Well, here we are, 6 months later. A new AI inventory of global emissions in the spotlight during Finance Day at COP27. This will allow leaders to know the location and scope of emissions being released. Mark Morano of Climate Depot has got a couple of minutes between gluing himself to a pyramid or gluing himself to a pharaoh's sarcophagus. Mark, it is great to see you. They are actually taking it to the next level, right out of your book, The Great Reset, because actually an individual carbon tracker is basically a way of keeping tabs on everything any individual does.
Yes, they are, Mark. Keep in mind, we as humans inhale oxygen and we exhale carbon dioxide. So we are literally 8 billion carbon dioxide emitters on the planet. Al Gore is doing a big splash. He's calling it the Climate Trace System, where they're going to monitor 72,000 alleged emitters. And the idea here is to create a Chinese-style social credit system where they're going to shame companies and anyone who has any type of emissions into not doing it. And it's explicitly, according to Al Gore, being designed to help the United Nations enforce CO2 emissions on companies, agriculture, farmers, you name it, across the board. This is one of the most frightening things that come out of this United Nations Climate Summit.
I like the way that it's meant to evoke the COVID track and trace thing, isn't it? The carbon track and trace. Yeah. Presumably because all these, most regular folks, I think, aren't interested in the COVID track and trace, but evidently that was regarded as a great success by these types.
It was. I mean, they looked at what happened in COVID, and now we have the Al Gore's and the United Nations Climate Trace app. You could shorten it to Big Al is watching you. And we saw how they particularly used the climate track and trace in Australia, where if you went into a supermarket and were unwittingly 10 feet from someone, you would end up being in the forced internment camp for 8 or 10 days, whatever it is. This is the most totalitarian thing to come out of this United Nations summit. This is something that we need to roundly condemn. We need to shore up massive global opposition to this because they're bypassing democracy. This is straight out of Klaus Schwab's playbook. We've already seen MasterCard last year join up with the UN to monitor carbon footprints and cut off your spending when you hit your carbon dioxide max.
Well, speaking of MasterCard, there was some fella, I think an advisor to the Bank of England, who said at COP today that carbon is basically now a currency. So in some strange way, they regard this as a carbon, measuring your carbon as a kind of prototype global currency.
Yeah, and that's what the Bank of England, by the way, is on record of programmable currency that you can only spend on what the government deems as sensible, a central bank digital currency. And of course, if you want to buy a cigar, a hamburger, or a firearm, or anything else, or gas for your car, that's going to be considered not sensible. So this is taking a page from the World Economic Forum, from technocracy. Again, this is something that is very frightening, George Orwellian, right here in Sharm el Shakedown. And you can see that the beautiful city lights behind me. This is not the innocent city it looks like. There is very sinister things happening here, Mark.
Thank you very much for that update, Mark Morano. I can't help feeling, you know, when the digital tracking currencies, they only let you buy what they think is essential, that my Christmas album sales are going to crater once that system's brought in. One person they're going to get with the carbon tracker is Laura Perrins of the Conservative Woman website, because Laura is wedded to weapons of mass destruction, such as her clothes dryer. I happen to be reading an old piece of mine from 10, 15, 25, 40, 57 years ago. I can't believe that people haven't wearied of all this stuff now.
Oh, well, I mean, the piece that I wrote today is so amongst all this great cost of living crisis talk, and it's certainly linked into what's going on in Egypt, because they don't like the amount of carbon and electricity that things like white goods use up. I remember sort of around August, there were lots of lifestyle pieces saying, don't worry about the cost of living. You know, just whatever you do not use that tumble dryer. Yeah. You know, just don't use the tumble dryer. It's an absolute killer on the electricity. Now, that may well be true. However, for me at least, the tumble dryer is absolutely critical. And I remember reading this, as I said, it was in August, and, you know, we were still kind of coming off the heat wave, and I thought, I don't think they're going to be telling us this in October, November. And, I mean, for the last 2 weeks here, at least, it has been incredibly wet, a lot wetter than normal, I feel anyway. Coming from Ireland, I'm used to wet. But the UK London certainly can be a bit drier, but it's been very wet the last 2 weeks. And strangely enough, the helpful lifestyle articles and the mainstream media have gone quiet on the whole don't use your tumble dryer situation.
So just take your blouse out of the washing machine, go into the garden, hang it, and wait 20 minutes, and then you can bring it back in 3 times as sodden as it was when you took it out. Exactly.
If you start line drying in this weather, it will all the stuff will come out wetter than it went than when you took it out of the washing machine in the first place. But I mean, there is a serious aspect to this, and actually, as I said in the piece as well, it was highlighted by the geniuses at Sage, who are back on who are back to give us advice. You know, let's ignore the fact that they are actually responsible for much of the inflation, because they pushed for the lockdown, which necessitated all the printing of the funny money.
They should be like Napoleon. They should be living in exile on St. Helena or whatever, and we should never hear from them again.
No, absolutely. Well, anyway, they piped up, and they did point out that some of the advice being given to, you know, beat the energy rise can be damaging to your health. And although they didn't single out drying all of your sodden clothes in your flat or in your kitchen, that, for instance, not opening the windows at all will cause respiratory illness. And I can tell you, Mark, if you're a single mom, you know, with 2 kids, and you're drying all your clothes off the radiators in your kids' bedroom, that's going to do a lot more damage to their lungs than COVID ever will.
No, you made that. I remember you making that point some months ago. And there's a sort of re-primitivization fetish. And they say, oh, well, if it's raining, see that's the bridge behind us. Well, Laura should be taking her laundry down there and beating them dry on the stones under the bridge by the river. If you can get under there with all the other 8 million Londoners trying to beat their clothes. I mean, the modern world, which was largely a British invention because of the Industrial Revolution, they actually want to, it's very rare to come up with the society that consciously wants to reverse itself.
Yes, I mean, Exactly. It seems it's an amazing coincidence how a lot of what the climate eco-nuts want you to do, namely not drive, not fly, not eat meat and not heat your home, is now what's going to happen to some of the British population out of necessity because they can't afford to do any of that. It seems an absolute amazing coincidence. And as you said, you know, maybe people aren't as wedded to their tumble dryer as I am, but once they've gotten your tumble dryer off you, then they're coming for your petrol or diesel car, and after that they'll come for your boiler, and when they're finished with that, you won't be able to eat any hamburgers anymore. I mean, it's all, as you say, it's a weird downer on the modern world, and you know, simply labour saving and energy certainly labour saving devices.
There is a sort of romance about primitive societies, but actually in cold reality they're extremely brutal and violent places.
Yes.
Because people will be killing their neighbours for very crude, basic things.
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, this is it. It wasn't. I mean, it's weird that it's a sort of conservative saying actually things weren't so great back in the past. But you do get some so-called progressive lefties, as you said, wistfully looking back at the time when we could all walk to work, you know, wearing our air-dried clothes. And this is just nonsense. You know, it's complete nonsense. And what I'm actually surprised I haven't heard more from are the feminists, because a lot of the changes will increase work for women, and it is usually women who are still doing the vast majority of the domestic, you know, care and cleaning. It increases all the labour for them. Remember, all these white goods, freed, where as I said in the piece, they're a symbol of liberty itself. It saves you time that you can therefore spend working.
Yes, that's right. So, folks, Laura's got a good point there. If you think the little lady's place is in the kitchen, slaving all day long, support this environmental agenda, because that's where they're going to put her back. Thank you very much, Laura Perrin. Stop the Steyn looms. You can ask me anything, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And Ava Vlaardingerbroek is coming up. She's not willing to grant pandemic amnesty to the lockdown lovers. You won't want to miss this. Stay with us.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other pay-per-review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV.
On radio.
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
Have you noticed the way politicians, media grandees, academics are all slowly backing off the craziness of the last 3 years? Last week it was Andrew Neil deleting his tweets. Now it's some fella called Piers Morgan. If you're wondering who he is, he's the guy Rupert Murdoch left Jerry Hall for. Rupert couldn't afford them both, so he decided to give all his money to Piers. But this guy Morgan is saying, hey, yes, maybe we all got a bit carried away with some of this stuff. No sale. The policies you and Andrew Neil cheerled for all failed. We talk about excess deaths on this show, not just COVID, but everything, all the deaths. We'll take a look at this graph. Excess deaths around the world from 2020 to 2022, from the least at the top to the worst at the bottom on that left-hand side. The UK comes about halfway down, excess death rate of 24.5%. Then you have countries with some of the most coercive lockdown regimes, Canada and Israel, with horrible excess death rates of 30% and more. But look at that, way up at the top of that graph. The one Western nation that didn't lock down was Sweden. There they are, they're that little thing right at the top on the left-hand side. And what do you know? They've got the lowest excess death rate in the world, 6.7%. The pom-pom girls of the propagandist media advocated for totalitarian measures, and the measures they championed killed a lot of people. Joining me now is Eva Valadingerbroek. Eva, are you minded to forgive these guys?
No, Mark, this is not the time of forgiveness. This is the time for justice. Because before we even start to begin thinking about forgiveness, we need a couple of necessary steps before that, and those are true repentance and accountability. And I'm seeing neither of those anywhere, really. All I'm seeing is The Atlantic saying that we need pandemic amnesty, and I'm seeing backtrackers like Piers Morgan talking about how, oh, you know, they were just following the science at the time and they couldn't have known any better. And you know what? It just doesn't cut it.
No, you're right. You were against all this stuff from the beginning. Why do you think more people just fell in line the way these pathetic poodles like Piers Morgan did?
Well, also because of the pathetic poodles like Piers Morgan. I remember him calling anti-vaxxers murderers. So that's the type of rhetoric, obviously, that will get people to follow the herd. If you're shamed like that, and not just shamed, not just socially, but also excluded from society, because that is what these people did, then, you know, the choice is pretty hard. If you have to choose between keeping your job or taking the jabba jabba, a lot of people felt forced to take the jab because otherwise you're going to not be able to support your family. And that is what these people did. So the fact that they're now talking about amnesty, that they're talking about forgiveness, when we haven't even started looking at real repentance, looking at real accountability from the people who enforced this. I just can't believe these people, because you know what? If we do that, if we say, okay, fine, we're going to follow up with amnesty, then what is the guarantee that they won't just do this all again?
Well, that's what I find so amazing. If you look at this stupid COP27 thing, all the stuff they're talking about is basically from the COVID model. Why would you let the people who screwed up the last 3 years for the entire Western world then say, you know, we're going to do it to you all over again, only even more so.
Right, yes, because the model worked. And the only thing they have to do in order for people to apparently forget everything again is to just change the words. So instead of talking about COVID, it is it's not a virus, but it's a climate crisis, it's a war, it's any type of crisis really that now other people will have to give up their rights for. That's how it always goes. So it baffles me that a lot of people still don't see through this type of rhetoric, that they don't see through the narrative. But as long as people don't really see that this was an unjust attack on our freedom, as long as people like Piers Morgan say, oh no, I just thought that the vaccine would stop transmission and therefore it was justified for me to want to have your rights taken away, then nothing has changed, because there was never at any point in time, Piers Morgan, and I'm talking to you, a justification for taking people's rights away for a flu-like virus like COVID. Never. So I'm sorry, do better.
We need to get you on the Piers Morgan show, Ava, because you'd eat him up. And I'll tell you what, I've got a better idea. Rupert, your TV channel is dying with this awful Piers Morgan uncensored show. Ava Valadiga broke uncensored. That'd be well. I'm just giving you a tip. Rupert, you've blown all your money on this loser. Now do something sensible and sign up Ava. Thank you very much, Ava Valadiga broke. I don't think we got time to stop it. Have we got Dan Wooden here? He's coming up to thump you Thursday. What you got, Dan, for us? OK, I'll do a quick stump for you. Titch Quackers wants to know, why are your Stump the Steyn spots getting so short? I would love to answer that, Titch, but it would take too long to answer that. They are getting short, aren't they? Yeah, I really need 7 or 8 minutes to answer that question. But thank you very much for it. Her Bareness says, what musical instruments do you play? I play the piano very badly. So if you see me next to a piano, I'll murder that Joanna for you. Here is Dan. What you got coming up, Dan?
Sorry, Mark, I wasn't ready for you, but I am now. Really excited. We've got Graham Linehan in the studio. He is, of course, the creator of Father Ted, really a comedy legend in the UK until he stood up for the biological rights of women. And you'll remember, Mark, he was booted off Twitter, one of those really early suspensions, for simply stating biological reality. So he's here tonight with a message to Elon Musk, which is surely, in this era of free speech, so-called TERFs, or in other words, folk who stand up for the rights of biological women, should be allowed back on your platform if you truly believe in free speech. So that's going to be a really fascinating interview, actually.
You know, Graham, they're working on Father Ted the musical, which is, if it's a hit, is going to be a blockbuster. And his fellow members of the creative team wanted to get rid of him because of that. That's all coming up with Dan at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The nation and most of the Commonwealth will fall silent. Do give it some thought tomorrow. Stay safe, stay free.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
On radio.
And online.
we're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness.